We're good? All righty, good evening again, everybody. This evening, this is the required by state law, town bond and budget hearing for fiscal year 2024, and what will be presented for both bonds and budget at town meeting on 12 March. Do I have that right, Patty? 12 March, same place, 6 o'clock. So we're going to open it up first with the bond hearing, and then I'll close that. And then we have to open the budget hearing with the two distinct entities in, can you hear me now? Better? There are two distinct entities according to the state law. So I am Rich Reeder, the chair of the select board, and we have with us today Bob Freeze, the vice chair, and Wendy Rathgeber, select board member. So we have a quorum to open the meeting. And I will turn it over to, who are you? Oh, okay. I will turn it over to Mark Dakota, the town manager, who's responsible for this budget.
It's okay. So this is the 31st time I've done this between Maine and New Hampshire. So go ahead. Blame me for it. It's okay. There are, as Rich said, two different hearings that we have to do by state law. And the first one that we have to do is our bond hearing. So anytime the town has a warrant article to borrow money, you have to do a hearing on those warrant articles where you're going to borrow the money. So before I get started with that, because I just looked out and saw that I failed to introduce everybody, I'd like to introduce our department heads. Here beside me is Steve Royer. He's our manager of administrative services in the town hall. Megan Bubar is our public works director. Dave Noyes is our director of public safety. And I have no idea what your name is. Dylan Tucker is our water and sewer superintendent. And Brooke Wakefield is our recreation services director. So for those of you who haven't met them, and they are available to answer questions as well. And so when you get sick of talking to me, I'm going to turn it over to them to answer questions. So, okay, let's move on to the first slide here. I apologize. The audio visual will come back in March. It's much better at town meeting. We have large screens and a full sound system, but to keep costs down for this hearing time, we're just going to use a little screen. And so you have handouts that you will be following along. Yes, the handout. These are the same as the handouts. Okay. So you have 2 slides per page. I have 1. So I'll try to keep up with and direct you to the proper page as we go. So the things we're going to do tonight for the bond hearing, I'll give you a quick overview of our capital programs. And then I'm going to ask Dave Noyes, because both of the bond warrant articles are related to the public safety department, and he's going to take us through those bond articles and the need for those 2 vehicles. And then we're going to talk about capital reserve accounts and debt funding. And then we're going to talk about use of fund balance and cash capital items. And I'll explain what those are in just a moment. So first thing is program overview. The town is limited in the amount of debt that we can have at any one time. And I'll show you a slide about that here in a second. And also we already have bonds or notes that we have borrowed for capital expenditures. Okay, and I'll review what we currently have on the books. So first of all, our town debt limit. So this should be page 2. Slide number 4. Okay, so it is based on the total valuation of the town, which changes virtually every year because of new construction, improvements, maybe a building has been torn down, whatever it is, that valuation fluctuates from year to year. But our limit of the amount of debt that we can have is based on that total valuation. For the town, we can have up to 3% of our valuation for town operations. For the water department, we can have an additional 10, up to an additional 10%. And then for the sewer department, there is no limit because our sewer system is regulated by federal regulations. And so we basically have to do whatever those regulations say in the operation of our sewer. So this just breaks down what we have for bonded debt as of January 1st of this year, what we plan to pay during 2024, and what we propose for new debt in 2024. And it breaks it down by department and sub-department. And you can look through those. If you have any questions, see me after the meeting and I can talk to you about that. Here's a little more detail. And I know this is hard to read. I do have a separate piece of paper that has all of these so that you can read them. But these are all of the bonds and notes that we currently have and the complete repayment schedule year by year. This is also going to be in the town report. So when that comes out, which will be at least 10 to 15 days before the town meeting, you're going to be able to go through and look through all of the existing debt. Okay, so as I said, I'm going to turn it over to Dave Noyes, and he's going to talk to us about our 2 bond articles, which is the first one is a replacement of fire engine number 2, and the second one is the replacement of our town ambulance.
Thank you, Mark. Again, my name is David Noyes, and this is the 20th time that I'll be doing this. So, yeah, that's right. So we're going to start with talking about engine 2. Go to the next slide. And just a nice little picture. So our current engine 2, so a little bit of background of what our current engine. We have 2 engines and a tower. That's our, comprises our fleet. We have traditionally replaced fire engines in this town every 25 years. So the last engine that we have was engine 1, we purchased in 2014. Since then, what has happened, since I want to say the COVID hangover, so to speak, is the fire engine industry nationwide has seen a huge demand. They went from anywhere between 3,000 to 4,000 truck requests in 2023 to over 9,000 industry-wide. So what does that mean? What that means is the demand is high. The price of these trucks have gone up 7% a quarter. And we are now waiting over 3 years to take delivery of a fire truck for what would typically be 9 months, 10 months, 12 months in the past. So getting back to what we currently have engine 2 is a 2000 American LaFrance. American LaFrance is no longer in business. So it creates some issues with us being able to find parts when it does break. This engine within the last 10 years had a major pump repair and a transfer case repair, which were 2 pretty large, big ticket items. Those have since been repaired, but now we're looking at a a fire truck that's going to be 25 years old. In a larger city with higher call volume, typically fire trucks get replaced 15 to 20 years. Because of the call volume here, we can hang on to them for 25 and be comfortable with replacing that truck at that time. So it is definitely showing its age. And like I said, being discontinued, the company is no longer in business. It's harder and harder to find replacements for this. So our proposed replacement for this truck is a 2020 question mark. Okay, so this truck was scheduled not to be coming in front of you until next year. Okay, but because of the industry, what has happened in the price increases last year, we got in touch with the manufacturers and said, hey, if this is taking 3 years, can we lock in a price now and try to defray some of these increases, astronomical increases that were happening in this industry? So we asked the company is E1, the dealer, they get built in Ocala, Florida. Our other 2 engines are E1 engines. The dealer is located in Vermont. We have a long-standing relationship with these folks. They come every year to do service tests, any warranty work, they'll come to us and perform. We asked them to spec the exact same truck with some minor changes as engine 1. It's the same truck that we ordered in 2014. Okay, so basically when you see the new truck, it'll look just like the other truck. They'll look like twins. So it definitely keeps our fleet consistent, and the price tag as it sits was $717,000. Okay, that's almost double of what we paid in 2014. That's the price of the market. We were able to defray, at least get this price locked in last year. We put 5% down on my recommendation of saying we got to stop the bleeding now. If we know we're going to be replacing this truck, let's get the price locked in. We did so as part of our contract. We have another 5% due by April 1st. So waiting till after town meeting. So we are not expecting to take delivery of this truck until late 2025 or early 2026. Okay. But I wanted to get this in front of you now because I wanted to get the money authorized because 1, we have another down payment coming up. And if somebody drops out and they're able to put our truck up sooner, I would much rather have the opportunity to do so than be able to say, hey, we got to wait again. So by that time, our engine 2 is going to be pushing 26 years old and or older. I'm not comfortable going much later than that with our current truck. So with the delivery schedule and those price increases, there is a contingency built in. There's a $40,000 contingency built into this price to control any price increases before we get the chassis. So the chassis, they break out the truck itself and the chassis. So until we get the chassis, we're in line for the chassis, we won't know what that is, but the dealer was comfortable with a $40,000 cushion, so to speak, built into this price to be able to lock in the chassis. Because of emissions that are coming up in 2026, all the dealers have warned that they're going to go through the L9 motors, and then when they're gone, and they have to go to I think it's an L11 with new emission standards. And the new emission standards, they said you might as well add another 120 to 140,000 per truck just for the new engine. So if we're getting in now, we're going to get in with the current engine without having to incur all the extra costs for the change in the motors that's expected to happen.
Indeed. So the warrant article that you will see at town meeting is an authorization for $690,000. That is the 717 minus the down payment that we've made. And there are two funding sources. One is bonds and notes, and the other is $45,000 in capital reserve money that we currently have. That'll go towards the purchase of the vehicle. We did not include any allowance for the trade-in of our current engine because we still have such a long time before we actually stop using our current engine. But we do plan on selling that, and we will apply the proceeds from that sale to reduce the amount of the bond authorization. But as town meeting, you have to authorize the gross budget. So we will only borrow that part of the 690 minus the 45 minus the trade-in that we need to. Yes,
So if I understand correctly, you want it rated trust, I'm hearing.
yes.
$700,000. So what about getting like a 10-year? If the price does see,
Well, what has happened in the industry as well right now is that used vehicles are being sold at very high prices. And generally, the warranties, when you buy a used vehicle, they don't come with warranties. Like our ladder truck, we purchased a new ladder truck. It came with, for portions of the truck, it came with up to 10 years of warranty parts. So by the time we pay the higher prices for the used vehicle, that if we can find one on the market, because they're not staying on the market very long, and by the time we pay potentially additional maintenance costs, in having the discussions with the board, we have decided to ask you for a new truck.
Chief, what's your call line here now? That'll be EMS call, just like.
Just fire, I have the particular number for you. I think it's, we were 255 total. I want to say 123 to 130 of those were fire calls.
And of those, how many construction fires?
I think we did 6 last year.
Is that in town or some mutual aid?
Most of them were mutual aid.
Okay. And what is the mileage on your second engine? How much that is forgiven?
You know, I meant to write that down. I don't know offhand.
What's the mileage on your newer engine?
I'm not quite sure what it is right now. I could check that. What, it's 10 years old. I'm not quite sure.
I guess my question, sir, is that I understand that, but you've got two engines here. How many people do you have on duty to service these engines?
Service the engines or man them for calls.
Man, well,
Depends on the day or the week. So we typically run two individuals minimum, 24/7.
yeah,
In our town. That gets factored in our ISO rating.
yeah.
Okay, for just the amount of people that we have. ISO likes to see 4.
Right.
That's in a big city. We're never gonna have that happen. During a typical day, there is 4 of us, typically around, especially during ski season, to man that, but at any given time, our minimum staffing is 2.
How often does this engine go up? Your primary engine,
The primary engine on every fire call,
but is that also EMS calls or just fire?
just fire.
Okay, so when is the second, the replacement, that you're looking to replace that, how often is that go up?
So with
That's
that,
the rate piece?
that one, so that's the backup piece and that's the piece that we use. So if we're out on a mutual aid call, that's to be the second due engine.
Okay,
And also for any structure fires in town, if you look at a lot of the elevations here, you don't, one truck to be able to pump water uphill, is not gonna do it for you. You're gonna need 2 trucks to do that.
but that's a mutual aid is one in second, I guess my question is that by the time you had enough manpower to man this second engine to pump your elevation you're talking about, would you mutual aid in here?
Yeah, they certainly could be, but we also have enough members in town now and in the surrounding area too, that, with our recalls, we're in a pretty good staffing position, to run that truck. A lot of times that's not going to be our second due, depending if it's a commercial, alarm that we're going to roll the tower first, before that piece.
It's a lot of money.
Is it not work, like, is it not working? I know it's kind of old, but is it?
No, it works. So it gets tested. All of our engines get pump tested every year. They have to go through an NFPA testing. Just when you start getting over the 20-year mark, the reliability of those vehicles start to degrade. And so for the safety of our firefighters, the safety of the people in town, I'm most comfortable at 25 years, replacing these vehicles. Certainly, if we were higher call volume, we'd be asking to replace this vehicle at 15, 20 years mark, but I'm comfortable at 25 years replacing these vehicles.
Did you say you're trading in the older one? Or
We're going to trade it in, sell it, however we can. So like Mark said, the market right now is very difficult because it's so hard to get a new truck that a lot of times what's happening across the country is these fire trucks are getting in accidents, they're getting out of service. And so the demand for these used trucks have gone way up. The price of them have gone way up, way more than you should be paying for a used fire truck. Heaven forbid something happens to one of our trucks, it's having in the military is one is none, two is one. And that's how I think of it is in this town. If something catastrophic happens to one of them, this is your backup.
Chief, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
First, what's the history of the number of trucks that the town has had?
The town has always maintained 2 pumpers and 1 tower. That's for the last 30, 40 years, has always had 2 engines, and a tower truck.
And my second question is, does having 2 trucks help us with the increase, not only over 30 years, but coming forward with more construction and more population?
It does. So especially when we're talking about commercial buildings, condominiums, multifamily, you look at a building, when you're at a structure fire, not just one side is on fire. There are multiple sides to a building. You're going to need multiple pieces of apparatus to deal with those kinds of incidents. So it's not like you have one fire, you have one truck just to put the fire out. Multiple engines, we rely on mutual aid to be able to assist us with that as we assist them on many of these calls.
I'd like to ask just one more thing. You mentioned ISO. Could you please explain that and what you think the impact would be if we had one truck and 1 tower?
Sure. So for those of you who don't familiar with ISO, so our ISO rating is a classification that the insurance companies look to set your homeowners insurance rates. Okay, they look at the fire equipment, the water infrastructure of the town, the training of the personnel, the number of personnel, and the type of equipment that we carry are all factors into what ISO looks at to give us a rating of what they feel comfortable to then charge you for insurance. Certainly having more people on and newer equipment and pump capacity and great hydrants in this town, we actually have a very good rating. And we actually just went through our ISO last year, and they haven't released it. We have to do it every 5 years, and they haven't released what our number is yet. So we're still working off of a number from 6 years ago. Yes.
ISO rating is going to be rural, correct? It's not going to be like the city of Phoenix. I mean, whatever number you come up with, even if you want more trucks in this town, you have to have triplicate or duplicate of all the above, plus a lot of manpower. So no matter what, our ISO rating, whether you've got 2 trucks or 4 trucks, is still gonna be the same, correct?
Usually, it depends if they look at it on, if you're able to man all those trucks. So, they look at it and, as of right now, the way our schedule is, we actually stand pretty good as far as we actually give them samples of our calls. They said, we want to see all these calls that you responded to fires. And then they actually look how many people actually went on those calls, and they take all those averages. And we actually did pretty good over our 2 previous ISO. We were showing, certainly a minimum of 2, but sometimes 3 and 4 were able to respond to those calls.
David, I know it's early, but you must have seen some of these used engines that are going for right now in the market. What kind of numbers are you seeing?
I haven't seen them recently, since I was mostly dealing with this.
2014 right now going for $399.
$399 for 2014. So, a lot of these, what's happened is I used to get those publications and emails all the time of these brokers. They're not sending out those emails anymore because they're not having the inventory like they used to. They're turning them over so quickly because of demand. You get a city that has 1 accident on the highway, somebody drives into a fire truck, they need to try to replace it. A lot of these big cities have trucks in reserve. There isn't a town around here that has that ability to do that, and I wouldn't expect that.
Question, if you locked into the price and there's a change of administration, inflation goes down, will they slow down the price, or are you locked in at that price?
I think we're committed to that price. It wasn't written into the contract that it was gonna change, just because I think the line is so long at this point. I don't anticipate, they anticipate it slowing down as far as the quarterly inflation on these prices, but I don't foresee that they were gonna go down.
How many trucks do you have in Thornton?
Hampton and Thornton, I believe they have 3 engines and a tanker and a heavy rescue, I believe. And somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. Yes, and 2 ambulances. Is there any other questions? Yes.
Wondering why the fire truck came off of the CIP. So last year it was set in 2025, I know why you're bringing it up. I don't know why it came off the capital improvement plan. I don't see it on there anywhere.
It got moved from 25 to this year.
Right, but the capital improvement plan is moved this year, goes out 6 years. Now I'm asking why it fell off.
It's on the 2024, it's in the 2024 column for 690,000.
And like I said, I wouldn't be here in front of you until next year, but because of what the prices were doing, I felt that it was appropriate to move it up. Yes, sir.
So apparently we shut down 5% in 2023.
That's correct.
Does it count?
I'm sorry?
You voted on that, it's in the count?
No, it came out of the operating budget of the town. And there is a non-appropriation clause in that contract for the down payment that says that the Board of Selectmen agreed at the time to put this warrant article on the 2024 town meeting warrant for the balance of the cost of the truck.
So the 5% really hasn't gone to E1 at all.
Yes, it did go to E1 to lock in the 717.
In the town meeting, if we vote this down,
Yes,
What happens?
we will lose a portion of, we will get back some of that down payment. I don't have the document right here to give you the exact number. But the reason for putting the down payment in at the time that we did, which I believe was April or May of last year, was to stop the increases that we were seeing on a quarterly basis. And, you know, we could have waited, but then this asking price would have been 800 something. And so the select board, we had the money available within the operating budget, and we made the down payment.
We did it as a request for, as a cost saving measure, knowing how long the delivery time was gonna be for this truck. And what the ultimate price was gonna be.
We cannot enter a contract without, we cannot enter a final agreement with E1 to actually start construction on that vehicle until we have the authorization for the full amount. So again, even if we hadn't put the down payment in, we wouldn't even be getting in the queue for that 3-year wait period for the construction of the vehicle. So that was the other reason for doing that, was the timing of getting the new truck before the current engine 2 gets too old. And also it's really the same situation that we faced with our previous tower truck. We waited and we put it off until we got to the point where the ladder failed on the ladder truck. We could not repair it. And our tower was out of service, which meant that we were waiting for mutual aid for a ladder truck for any situation. And we're trying to prevent getting into that situation again, because with that ladder truck and the large buildings that we had, we had to enter a short-term lease to get a new ladder truck here so that we could then come in the next year and ask town meeting for the balance of the money. So we are very limited in our ability to react when we have these situations. Like you said, if we had an accident or a major breakdown on a piece of fire apparatus before, you could get a new one in a matter of a few months. Or you could go on to the used truck market and you could find a vehicle to replace it. That is not the environment that we're working in right now. It's completely changed since 2020.
Just to answer your question, engine 2 has 26,316 miles and engine 1 currently has 13,267. Any other questions? The annual maintenance right now, as long as nothing breaks, we just pay for our annual pump testing. And then it's, general maintenance, it's oil changes and filters and that sort of thing. So it's relatively low unless it fails. About 5-6 years ago, it failed the pump test. And that gets pretty expensive once you start talking about repairing trucks. Then it's down. We have to send it away. This particular truck went to Tamworth, New Hampshire for several months just to get repaired. That initial one was about
25.
about $25,000. Is there any other questions?
Okay, so we'll move to the second warrant article, which will be article number 13 on our town meeting warrant for the ambulance replacement. Page 6.
Okay, very much like the fire truck, we replace ambulances traditionally every 10 years. Why do we do that? Because after every 10 years, usually after 10 years, we only have one ambulance, and for it to be in service as our only ambulance in town is a number one priority for us, to make sure that that ambulance is up and available and ready to go at any time. The repeated trips to back and forth down Triple I Road and Route 49 with the Frosties in the wintertime, sometimes several trips a day, to Spear, take some wear and tear on these vehicles. We went to a Titan, larger Titan class vehicle with this ambulance compared to previous ambulances. And compared to the previous ambulances, about after 5 years, we were constantly chasing maintenance issues with those lighter trucks. I am glad to say that this truck has actually stood up, and the only thing that we've had to do to this is tires and brakes on this vehicle. And it's really shown that the reliability factor for this particular truck is really good. So the current ambulance is a 2014 custom TerraStar ambulance. Like I said, we typically have always replaced ambulances every 10 years. And so all the equipment except the power cot gets transferred over into this ambulance. So it's not buying any new equipment that goes into it. We just make that transfer. Even though it is in good shape, it is a 10-year-old vehicle. But in its current condition, I'm hopeful that even though the dealer didn't give us a great potential price, because they don't know, again, the ambulance world, just like the fire truck world, is looking at unprecedented wait times for these vehicles. So we're not looking to take delivery of this vehicle. Last year, we weren't obligated to put any money down other than just say we would like to be in line, put a spec out, and our spec, we told them, give us a quote on the same exact ambulance that we ordered, that we have now. And so it's a direct replacement for what we have. Throw my glasses on real quick. So the new ambulance is either a 2024 or 2025 PL Custom Titan class chassis. So they no longer have the TerraStar, so it's the International's version. It's the same motor, same drivetrain frame, and it's the same, like I said, the same spec as our current ambulance. This is the same manufacturer that has done our previous 3 ambulances. They're out of Maine, and they've been very reliable for us as far as getting service, any service issues or any other maintenance issues. They're right on top of it. So this price includes a $38,000 contingency. So it's not locked in, much like the fire trucks, until the chassis gets there at the factory. So we're waiting to hear, but according to the salesman, this should cover any price increases between now and then, before we take delivery. So again, we would usually take about 9 months to get an ambulance. We're looking at anywhere between 2 to 3 years to get an ambulance. So we're going to be pushing our current ambulance out a couple extra years, which I'm still comfortable with, because it is still in good shape. But again, its reliability is number one priority for us. And I'm just very conscious about really pushing, taking an ambulance and really pushing it to its limits. Okay. just so you know, and this doesn't have any factor on how we budget this, but our ambulance revenues were $160,000 in 2023 and up from 130,000 in 2022. So after this is a 10-year ambulance, all those ambulance revenues over there. So if you were to look at it this way, this isn't the way that we budget it. But the ambulance essentially pays for itself within 5 years. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Is that money being put aside to fund the big one, or where did that money go?
Yes, we have a capital improvement program for repair and replacement. And there is some money that we do put away towards purchasing of a new one, and that's going, I'll have Mark.
Yeah, same as, no, the revenues from the ambulance are used to offset the tax rate. And then we fund the bonds through the tax rate. So it is a portion of the overall revenue of the town, but it is not saved specifically just to replace the ambulance. Because if it were, then your taxes would go up by whatever amount was being put into that account. So we just treat it as a single account and pay for it that way. So there is $40,000. It is not a capital reserve. It's not like the fire truck. But last year, town meeting appropriated $40,000 for ambulance maintenance and replacement as a capital item, not as a capital reserve. And the difference in that is we can use that money through the Board of Selectmen to maintain the vehicle and use it towards the purchase of a replacement vehicle. It's just called a different thing in state law. So, but there is $40,000 that we will apply to this purchase price. And again, like the fire truck, whatever we don't need to bond, we will only bond the balance.
We'll be keeping that vehicle, and this will be a second.
No, we don't have the building to keep it in, to keep this ambulance. So it will be either sold or a trade. And again, that price, in addition to the $40,000, will come off of the bond. But we must have your overall authorization as a town meeting for the property vehicle in total, the gross budget. Yes, Tim?
Chief, you're called by EMS.
Last year we did, if you give me a minute, I'll give you the exact numbers. I have it in my folder.
Of that, what percentage was up to the health, the resort?
That I couldn't tell you. I would say probably half, if I had to guess.
You don't break down the town versus the resort?
No, I don't. I
It's
could.
my next question. So if our ambulance is going back and forth, we're taking skiers off that resort. We only have one ambulance in town. What are the town calls it? That's my first question. The second question is that if they're going up, and you said at least half of it, 50%. Are they paying any extra to the resort to help out with a purchase of an ambulance?
So we have mutual, to answer your first question, we have mutual aid.
Yep.
Mutual aid comes out of Campton.
Yep.
If Campton's not available on either of their two ambulances, we rely on Plymouth or Linwood would come in. So we don't charge outside people. The people who get charged to use that get charged for the ambulance are the people that use the service. So those are the patients that pay for the ambulance.
They're actually paying for the maintenance and everything on the ambulance, and the fire trucks, and the police cruisers. So my question is, if the resort is having it set cap, just a guesstimate, why aren't they paying more? Why don't they have a contract service up there to take away from the wear and tear on the ambulance?
It's a service that we provide. It doesn't matter whether it's on the mountain, in the street, on Route 49, in town square, at the ice arena. We don't break that out. It is all part of our jurisdiction, and we respond to those calls just like we normally would anywhere
I
else.
would have, that's, I guess, my question to the town manager or to the select. So if this call volume is coming from up there, why are we paying for the wear and tear of that ambulance for 50% of the call volume is coming out of it?
As Dave said, this is a town of Waterville Valley ambulance. The resort is in the town of Waterville Valley. The resort is a taxpayer of the town of Waterville Valley. And they pay just like everybody else, but like Dave points out, the revenue that is being generated, and as the slide says, it is 160,000 in 2023 was generated. That was not paid by any taxpayer. That was paid by the patients using the ambulance. So this is an ambulance service that we provide to the entire town. Whether it's a hiker on top of Mount Osceola that needs to be taken to Spear Hospital or somewhere else, we service any patient in Waterville Valley. So that's been the approach that this town has always taken with our ambulance.
So maybe we should have a different approach then.
Well, okay.
There isn't a town in the state that does that, of all the ski areas that are here, or water parks, or any other amusement place that says we're gonna contract out and.
Linwood Ambulance Service services the towns of Lincoln and Woodstock. That includes the ski area. So that is the way municipal services are.
That ambulance stuff with a broken arm up at the resort. And one of our local residents who lives here all the time has a cardiac problem.
Mhm.
And we have to wait for mutual aid from them where it's up there. And I just think that the town maybe should start going after the resort, or maybe either a contract service, or we do get that second ambulance, keep that second ambulance and make it go up there at the resort.
And we thank you for keeping us safe.
I can give you, I don't have to the end of the year, but from January 1 to December 6th, we had 274 calls for service. 58 of those were EMS, 58% were EMS, and 42% of those were fire calls. And if you're interested in seeing how that breaks down, I'd be more than willing to share that.
Can you put that on public safety site that you have, and maybe pictures of your equipment? Because I could be wrong, but I couldn't find it anywhere. It just said I had to go into many apps to find out what kind of equipment you have.
Okay.
You kind of in person, and maybe that more, to me, communication is everything. But when you communicate, then people won't let you have a lot of questions.
Sure. All this stuff gets put in the town report. So if you want to see any of the historical data, we break it out in the town report also. But I'd be happy to post this data for everyone to see. Yes. That's correct. Yes, that is true. That is true. And we prepare, even though it's a very rare event that we run multiple calls at the same time, but that's where we certainly rely on our mutual aid partners. We do have several members that are in town in this area. And we've added 2 additional paramedics that are actually here in town now. So we're actually in really good shape as far as our staffing goes.
Do you have
And
24 hour ALS coverage here in town all the time?
Just about, yes, absolutely. And in a few cases where there's just a basic EMT on, those are very few and far between. Most of our providers are all A's or paramedics.
I'm with the
AEMT, an advanced EMT, an ALS provider.
And maybe put that under concept, would be lighting without.
Sure. Yes,
David, is it still true that residents of the town of Watson County are transported for free or reimbursed for their costs?
No.
so traditionally, now because of, everybody has insurance, our billing company, we have a third-party billing company that bills, insurance, Medicare, all our rates are set, through Medicare and, through the state. And usually what typically happens is if there's any leftover costs for, most of our residents, if there's any hardships or anything like that, we have in the past, forgiven those. Yes.
Is the 166 bill or received?
That's received. That's received. We do write off a certain amount. I don't have that amount for you because it fluctuates every month. But I can tell you that, because more people have insurance, whether it's Obamacare or any of that, we did see a spike in our revenues, and has taken over, and as director, I've opted to, try to collect as much of that as we can, before we actually write that stuff off. So I don't like signing those and writing off a lot of money. Yes,
So if the bond, the ambulance goes through, when will the taxpayers actually have to pay for a bond delivery? Or will we have to start paying right away?
it's upon delivery, so not until we actually get the truck. So this may not even hit us till next year.
And beyond that, when we have to make the actual payment for the ambulance, there are 2 time periods of the year, January and July, when we actually take our bond issues. So if it comes in May or something like that, we'll have a very short-term note for it, and then we will bond for it. So it could be a few months off even from the delivery, just depending on when the truck.
But so a couple of years from now is roughly the same time the sewage treatment plant's gonna come in. So it's not-
Yeah, probably not now. I've got a slide on that. We'll talk about that. Yeah, but yes, I understand what you're saying, and there is a time lag. But again, we don't take the bond until we absolutely need it.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, do you want to talk about your, while you're here, just so you don't have to keep popping up and down? This is not a bonded warrant article. This is a regular warrant article for the cruiser replacement. It is going to be article number 16 on the warrant. And Dave, you want to talk to the replacement?
Sure, Chief Pear's here, but I hope,
Yes.
if he doesn't mind, I can, speak to this. We have 2 police cruisers. We typically replace those every 6 years. And last year, we replaced our 2017. This year, we're looking to replace our 2018 police cruiser. It has 92,000 miles on it. We typically, when the cruisers were parked outside, we were in like a 4 to 5 year replacement plan, just because of the wear and tear and being outside really takes a number on them. But now we're able to bring those inside. We've got a little extra time, with that. So we're looking to replace it with exactly the same cruiser that we did last year, the Dodge Durango. That delivery time is 9 to 12 months, which is usually you can get them in a couple of months, but that's pushed out a little bit. It's not as bad as the fire trucks, but we put our name on one last year in hopes that, once this goes through, we should see this vehicle, by the time it gets outfitted sometime in August. Any other questions? If there's any questions on this, it'll be the same exact vehicle that we got last year. There is no changes when we transfer the equipment over.
So this one will hit the taxes, and it's not funded,
That's correct. And
tax impact.
tax impact, so the 506 million means that we raise $50,000 every 10 cents.
Say it again.
By $50,000 every 10 cents. So a little, what, 12, 14 cents.
Yeah, question?
If you keep the statistics on revenue generated by the police cruiser.
Not specifically the police cruiser. It gets lumped into public safety revenues. And that's everything from parking tickets to court fines to fees, permitting. It's all balled together.
I think it was 11.
And Dave has two more articles. Promise we're moving along here. Article 14 will be a replacement of our self-contained breathing apparatus. Dave, you can talk.
Yeah, so the SCBA's are air packs that the firefighters wear to go into hazardous environments. It's not always fires, it's dumpster fires or anything bad that we don't want to breathe in. We wear these air packs. So in the last 2 years, we've applied for the Assistance to Firefighters Grant, the AFG grant through FEMA and the federal government. We have been unsuccessful in getting that project funded. It's very competitive. It's a national grant program. And what we were replacing is 17-year-old air packs. 18 years now, actually. So what we did was these air packs, we took the match. Okay, there was a total amount, it was $140,000 to replace all of them. The federal grant was for 95% of that. Our town obligation was only 5%. Because they weren't funded, we had that 5%. We used that 5% to buy 4 air packs 2 years ago. That was enough to outfit engine 1. Last year, it wasn't funded. We used that 5% to buy 4 air packs to outfit the tower. We now have 8 air packs left. The fire captain and I attended a informational meeting for AFG with FEMA in December. And they outlined how competitive that this grant really is and outlined a number of items that if they weren't considered high priority for the government, don't even bother applying. Air packs are very high priority, but within this grant, they offer micro grants for $75,000. This micro grant allows us to get pulled out of the national competition and just compared to those who are asking for micro grants. So the 75,000 is the maximum allowed for micro grants. And you get extra points that if you were denied in previous years, they actually give you bonus points in applying for these grants for the micro grant. So the money here is for 75,000. We are only obligated for 5% of that. Okay, and that will allow us to purchase the remainder 8 air packs that we need. Any questions?
And that funding will be shown on the warrant article so that you can see the 37 portion of the.
Hey Dave, why don't you just tell them about the firehouse sub grant that we got?
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
so are you asking for $75,000 or $37,000?
we have to ask for the gross amount in order to use the grant.
Yeah. So that's why that's there. Last year, we applied for Firehouse Sub Foundation. I know many of you have probably seen the commercials on TV where Firehouse Sub says we donate all these monies to fire and EMS companies. Well, it's true. They actually do. We applied for a grant and we received just under $25,000 to replace our Jaws of Life. Those of you know what the Jaws of Life are, and our RAM tools. That was 25, and they're battery operated. So before we were using a gas powered engine and hydraulics to run, they were very bulky, very limiting as far as where we could go with these. And we were awarded this grant just shy of $25,000, and that one didn't cost us a thing. And it was just again, that was a nationwide application process, and glad to say we're always looking for opportunities to take advantage of these sorts of things. So if they come up, we're going to try to jump on this stuff to take advantage of the grants that are out there. So speaking of the grants that were out there, so our intention was to get away from the AFG grant for air packs and just fund those separately over the next 2 years, just like we had been. But when we went to the seminar with FEMA, they listed out high priorities, mid priorities, and low priorities. And they said, because of how competitive this grant was, they said, don't even bother if you're asking for low or mid priority items, they're not going to get funded. SCBA air compressors were one of those. And our full intention, and I'm glad we went, because we would have applied for AFG to replace our air compressor. Our air compressor was purchased in 2005. It allows us to fill our air bottles. So either at a fire or even during training, it is the only piece of equipment that we have that fills our air bottles. So right now, that is now out of service. It is broken. There was parts, they no longer make parts for it. So right now we are filling our air bottles in Campton, which is fine if it's during training. You know, we got to send somebody out of town to be able to do that. But at a fire or an emergency, if we had to fill these bottles, we'd be asking for SCBA trailers from Plymouth and Ashland potentially to come to us to be able to fill these air bottles. So to replace this is the $62,000 to replace this compressor. So it's the compressor is on the right. And the fill station is that unit on the left that the air bottle is attached to. It goes into a chamber. You're looking at 4,500 pounds of pressure. So it has to go into like a vault in case there was a failure, that it doesn't injure the person operating the piece of machinery. So this is replacing on that 19-year old compressor that we have now. Any questions?
Just curious, how many can you fill in?
We can do 2 at a time. Yes. Whenever we use it. So we do a monthly training. We do a monthly training, but then the guys on their own will do trainings on a weekly basis. And if they breathe air, they got to fill the bottles. We only have so many bottles, so many spares set aside, and you don't want to run your supply of bottles out and have a bunch of empty bottles waiting there in case you do have a fire and you actually need them. So we're in the business of, if you run them dry, you fill them back up.
Store can't charge you for your bottles?
They do not. No.
And the funding source for this thing is general taxation.
Right, so all of this discussion,
Yep.
replacement cruisers, bottles, and things like that.
That's acceptable.
Well, wait, let me give a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
It may not be. That's all, gathered together in your 345 grand special warrant.
Yes.
That's where all, and then
There's a whole different, there's a whole different hearing on that, but yes, that is good. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so if there are no other questions on the compressor, we're gonna move on. So the next two warrant articles will be Article 17 and Article 18. They are called capital reserve accounts. It's a special type of account in the in state law, in the financial regulations. And there are two separate warrant articles. The first one is to create and fund $100,000 for a Snows Mountain Road capital reserve. During 2023, we started with Horizons Engineering a review of Snows Mountain Road, the water line, and a possible sewer line along that road. They did some very preliminary conceptual engineering, gave us cost estimates, which the total project to do the road, the water, and the sewer line is several $1 million in their initial cost estimate. But now what we want to do is take that concept and do additional engineering on it so that we have a better number to bring back to town meeting in 2025. We want to be able to utilize whatever we don't use from the $100,000 on further engineering if the town meeting authorizes a full project for it. We will have to do design engineering of the lines and of the new road surface and all of that. So we would utilize whatever is left out of this capital reserve to start that engineering. So this is just the first or the second step in a multi-step process here for this project. But we are setting it up as a capital reserve so that it can stay in place for a number of years, because capital reserves do not lapse. They are controlled by or monitored by the trustees of the trust fund, and the selectmen are the agents to expend money out of those capital reserves for the specific projects. And I have to say, this particular $100,000 was a direct result of the conversation that you had at town meeting last year at the end of the meeting. There were actually 3 capital reserves that were discussed by the Capital Improvements Program Subcommittee and the Planning Board. They did move those forward to the selectmen for consideration, but given the budget overall, the selectmen decided to just make this $125,000 appropriation in these 2 warrant articles for 2024. So this is an ongoing process, and actually, I think now, Amy, if you want to come up and talk about what we reviewed last year. So this is, I just want to explain, this is a warrant article from last year's town meeting. This is not in 2023.
Hello, you hear me? Excellent, okay. Yeah, I spoke last year at the end of the annual meeting. My name is Amy Saulnier. I live at Presidential. But it was very, very late. Most of you had gone. So the folks here have been gracious enough, have allowed me to speak again today at somewhat of a reasonable hour. So it's not at 11:30. My history was in Treasury. I managed money, I managed borrowing, I managed foreign exchange and interest rate risk management. And I had this particular bond article put up. It's actually just an example of some bond articles that I've seen since I've been here about 8 years that I was always really uncomfortable with, because I would look at them and part of it would say, first part of it would be, we want to appropriate funds for X, something very important. And then the second half is, oh, we're going to borrow the money for this. And I always looked at it and said, well,
I can't say no to the borrowing without saying no to the important item, the fire truck or the ambulance or whatever. I felt like I was being forced to approve the borrowing, and it made me very uncomfortable. And I didn't understand why that was happening. So I'm here to talk to you about capital reserves. I've been the chair of the capital reserve, the trustee of the trust fund, which we were just talking about, for 6 years. We are responsible for, investing the capital reserve, and we're responsible for approving any transfers out of the capital reserve. So we make sure that any payments we made out, any approvals out are being used for what that warrant article said, what you approved. So that's our job. Okay, capital reserves, those are designated savings accounts for expected purposes. So we expect to buy a fire truck in 2025. We save money for it. We expect to buy an ambulance and whenever, we're going to save money. And the intent is to open up that capital reserve and add a little bit every year so it gets bigger. I'm not suggesting like an assessment where we raise $10 million in taxes and stick it into a capital reserve. That would make no sense. Okay. So bottom line, I feel that we should have a choice when we go to buy something. I feel that we, the taxpayers, should have a choice whether to borrow or pay cash. The reason we never have that choice is because we don't have any cash. We have undesignated fund balance, which is about $2 million, and we usually use some of it. And then we have the capital reserves, but our capital reserves are only $95,000. Hebron is a tiny town. I'm not from New Hampshire, but I understand it to be a very small town. They have 800, this is as of last year, because this came from my last presentation. They have over 800,000 in capital reserves. And it's for things like fire trucks, just like we're buying. Okay. There is a sheet that I put out there. It's capital reserve comps, and it just shows that analysis. It's in thousands. I left it out on the table if you want to grab it. It shows 7 cities or towns that I looked at in Grafton County. I dug into their records and I dug into their reports, and I found out how much capital reserves they had. So that's all that this report is that, comparing that. And I dug into each one to show what it was designated for. So you'd see that, yeah, they're saving for the same types of things as we're saving for. So the only way to have a choice going forward is if we build capital reserves, meaning we save up the money in advance. So then when it comes time to buy the asset, we have this money, we can decide, do we want to borrow money? And this is when we know the borrowing rate. We don't know it now, but we'll know then. Do we want to borrow at that rate, or do we want to pay cash? If the rate's low, heck, borrow, I don't care. But my concern is we don't know what the rate's going to be. What if the rate's going to be 10% or 20? Who knows? We don't know. That's called interest rate risk management. We have to protect ourselves from the fact that the interest rate could shoot up between now and then. Is that clear? I hope that was clear. So if we build that savings, we not only earn interest, also another benefit, but we are protected from that interest rate going up. We get a choice at that time to pay cash or not, and we avoid the interest expense. Last year, we paid $250,000 in interest expense or debt service alone. That would fund a lot. That's annually, and it's going up, obviously, with the wastewater treatment facility. Let's see here. I think I've done. I can't tell you how much our capital reserves should be. I definitely think they should be more than $95,000. And I can also tell you, this is not something that can happen overnight. This isn't going to be easy because it's going to be tough to save money while we're paying all the debt. it'll be tough to pay off the last fire truck and save for the next fire truck. So we need to do this carefully, very carefully and very, very slowly. But someday, if we do this, someday we'll find ourselves in a position where maybe we can put 50% down, but we'll be reducing that bleeding of interest expense. That's how I was raised. Bottom line, if this gives us the opportunity to reduce our exposure to interest rate fluctuations, reduce costs, and maintain and earn interest on the earnings, it's the right thing to do for the town. Oh, and I do. These guys have listened to me ad nauseum. Trust me, I've been to select board meetings, I've been to planning board meetings. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me. I do appreciate it. I do appreciate it. And you guys too, you've been amazing. And I also want to thank my very good, a very good friend, John Racine, for helping me push this through, and the CIP committee that got those ones up there. Questions?
Are the capital reserve funds going to be invested in a portfolio?
They are. Yeah, they are all invested right now. All of our cash, the undesignated funds and the capital reserves are invested in the New Hampshire PETA, which is a pool in New Hampshire that gives us good rates. 5.39 last I saw.
Less than inflation. Yeah.
Yeah,
So we're losing money in that.
you absolutely.
The equity portfolio or something of that nature?
One of the things I wanted to do before was to do an RFP. I don't think we'd be investing in equities. I don't think we can invest in equities. That's not permitted, but we might be able to get more. But I didn't bother with an RFP because I was only managing $95,000. So I kind of gave up. Yep. Judy.
When we were talking earlier about the fire truck, I think, we talked about how it was going to be paid for in finance, and one comment in that was that possibly 45,000 would come out of the capital reserve, maybe less, we'd find out in the end. And now to find out we have a capital reserve of 95,000.
No, there's a total of 95,000. 45,000 of that is specifically for the replacement of fire trucks.
Yes, I
And that amount, we are going to use, it's in the warrant article. So it will be used to reduce the overall bonding.
I understood that. My point is, the town has a reserve of 95,000. I understand there are many other ways we can find.
No, they actually are specified, the uses were specified at the time we raised the money. We can't access the rest of the 50,000 for the fire truck. It's put away for other purposes.
Yeah, if you look at the trustee of the trust fund
My
report,
misunderstanding, we have in the reserve account $95,000.
the $95,000 is the total. If you look at the trustee fund report, in the annual report, it's broken down into sub-accounts. One is fire apparatus, one is Curious George Cottage,
It all adds up to
and that adds up to 95,000.
Understand that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, am I the only person that finds it appalling that this entire town has a reserve of 95,000?
Are you saying only 95?
But that's not our only reserve. We also have,
So this is only capital reserves. We have other reserve accounts.
Correct.
that we're saying. Know what the total is and all.
I'm gonna show you as we go through.
Okay.
Right.
I will talk.
Yeah, he's going to be speaking to the,
Reserve. Certainly one of the reserves.
there are undesignated fund balance, and basically what that is money that's left over from a prior year.
An undesignated fund balance is a different account.
Yes,
Yes, and that could be spent in any year on anything.
that's absolutely
So
true.
potentially that never accumulates. Because it could.
Yeah, Exactly.
Okay,
So is your concern that the capital reserves are only 95, or is your concern that are not.
Usually a reserve account is earmarked for potential things in the future.
It is.
But
is.
it's an account that could be spent as undesignated funds.
No, it's two different things.
Choose to,
The cap,
that's a problem.
right, the capital reserves are designated for specific purposes, like the fire or the Curious George. They all add up to 95. The undesignated fund balance is separate.
And that stays in an undesignated balance and it can be spent at any
Right.
time.
I'm gonna talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, the,
Yep.
the selectmen decide how to spend it, but we approve it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate all the work that went into this.
Thank you.
And I think it's great. One thing that you might help strike on the point is, if you had the debt that all these towns are paying as well. Like, what-
Yeah, it's in the annual report. It's, last year it was $250,000.
So, I mean, if you could tell us.
Oh, what their debt is.
You know. if
That's a good idea.
More than theirs, or if they're a lot more than that.
Right, good point. That's a good point. Margaret?
Yeah, I just had a little bit of insight on how it is that we ended up here.
Oh, yes.
Because basically, for years and years and years, the general philosophy of the town was, at the point in time that we are going to buy a major piece of equipment or town building or vehicle or whatever it is, the people who are going to benefit from that are the taxpayers right now at the time that we're buying it and for the life of that equipment.
Right.
Therefore,
I
we're
understand.
not gonna ask people from 10 years ago to start saving for something that they're not gonna get any use of because it's not gonna be bought in another 10 years.
I understand that.
And that's how we got to where we are. That's the reason that the reserves are as low as they are. Is because there was a general philosophy that a lot of other towns obviously don't follow. That said, let's have the taxpayers who are benefiting most from this particular item be the ones that have to pay, either from undesignated fund balance or from taxable revenue or from.
I appreciate that, and I apologize. I meant to make that point.
And just to expand on that, thank you. Just to expand on that, the philosophy, as Margaret said, for 50 years in this town has been that the people that get to benefit from the new fire truck pay for it at the time that it's put in service, and not saving money 10 years ahead of time to come up with that money ahead of time so you can pay cash. So it's a philosophical debate, and it's also a money debate, because in order to come up with the savings, tax rates today are going to have to go up. And you're going to have to not only pay for as Amy said, not only pay for the fire truck that we're buying right now, but we're saving for a fire truck for 10 years from now. So it's a philosophical thing, and the town has always gone one way, and Amy feels like we should start sort of edging in the other direction, but that's where we are at the moment.
I completely appreciate that. I don't think it's a philosophical question, though. I think it's a financial question, because saving money, you earn interest, borrowing money, you pay interest. I do understand that you want the users of the asset to pay for the asset. I understand that logic. And I understand that there are people who may not be here not expect to be here for a long time in town, and they may not want to pay for something in the future. They don't care that in the future, people will be paying even more because they're going to pay for the interest expense. What I'm saying, I feel, is the right thing. It's the financially responsible thing. I would say to try to avoid paying or saving money out of taxes at the same time that you're paying off a particular item. You've got to plan it very carefully and slowly. Maybe 20 years, we can pay 50% and 50. This is going to take a long, long time, but it's not the reason not to do it.
Wouldn't it be incurring more debt each year?
Oh, yeah, every year. Yeah, and we're about to.
People to know too, that we're paying for that.
Yeah. And I have one more point that you guys are gonna hate me for this. You know, wastewater treatment facility that was 50 years old. We've been maintaining it. There's a stack of repair bills that have been paid on this wastewater treatment facility. I'm not saying nobody paid for the treatment facility, but it was 50 years old. There's something called depreciation. If people who were using the asset were paying for the asset all 50 years, we would have money saved for that asset. So
This is really getting ready to move along.
Okay,
I'm gonna-
okay. Thank you, Amy. Okay, so Mr. Chairman, if it's all right with you, at 7:43, we'll close the bond hearing because it is a separate thing from the budget hearing. So we're gonna start the budget hearing.
Let me ask for a motion to close the bond hearing. Second?
So moved.
All right. We have a motion to open the budget hearing.
Anything.
Right, you got all that, Sharon?
All right.
Thank you.
All right, very good. So this is the operating budget for the town of Waterville Valley for 2024 as proposed by the staff and Board of Selectmen. 3 definitions, just things that I will say that I want to make sure you understand. The operating budget is the expenditures for our department operations, which do not include any of the bonds that we just talked about, or special or separate warrant articles, or the capital reserves, okay? So it's just running each of the departments. Revenues, when I talk about revenues in a couple of slides, those are fees and income other than taxes. So each department, like the ambulance revenue that we talked about, revenue from our recreation programs, et cetera, those are taken off of the total budget, and the balance is what we have to raise in taxes to fund the department operations. An appropriation is an authorization or an amount of money that town meeting says we can spend for a given purpose. All right, so you'll see the term raise and appropriate. That is you giving the Board of Selectmen and our staff the ability to spend money. Without an authorization, we can't spend a dime. So it's very important. These articles are very important in the operation of the town throughout the year. Before I start, there are 3 things that I would like to review because they were major topics last year during town meeting, and they have been ongoing projects for several years now. So I wanted to give you an update. The first of those is the road projects that we have been appropriating money for over the past 2 or 3 years. We completed the road improvements on Valley Road, Tecumseh Road, and Snows Brook Road. The only thing that we did not get done was the final top coat and some very minor drainage work on Snows Brook Road from Village Road by Tyler Springs around the corner and down to the golf clubhouse. So we will come back. The contractor, we have not completed that contract. The contractor will come back in the spring and they will finish paving the road and finish up the project that we started last spring. In addition to that work, we entered a contract last week with our road design engineer, HEB Engineering, out of Conway. They are going to be doing some engineering, design work on Boulder Path Road. The intent is to replicate what we have been doing on Valley, Tecumseh, and Snowsbrook so far, and extend from Valley Road up to probably West Branch Road by the tennis courts, and recreate what we've already built on Boulder Path Road. That design has not started yet. We just entered the contract, so we're going to be working through that design probably for most of the rest of this year, so that we have contract documents that we can put out to bid, and we will get pricing, and then whatever monies we would need to continue the project down Boulder Path Road, we will come back to the 2025 town meeting and ask for. We have approximately, after the contract for the design engineering on Boulder Path, we have approximately $1 million left in money that town meeting has already authorized us to utilize, so that will be available for the work on Boulder Path Road. But we're continuing trying to stay a year ahead on our design, so that we bring good numbers into you when we're asking for additional authorization. Additionally, Snows Mountain Road. So I mentioned it a little bit before. We have had some conceptual engineering done on Snows Mountain Road. There is a water line that runs under the road that is in very poor shape. Since I've been here, we have repaired it at least 11 times, maybe more. And when I say repair, I mean we put a collar on it to stop small cracks and other leaks. It needs to be completely replaced, right? But we do not want to do that until two things. We have talked at town meeting last year about the possibility of putting a sewer line up there. There are no properties on Snows Mountain Road that have sewer service to our treatment plant. So we're going to have the engineers work on designing and telling us how we could put a sewer line up there, tell us how to repair the water line, and then at the same time address the drainage problems that we have on the road, and a resurfacing of the road finally. The road was in such bad shape this past summer, and the severe rains that we have been experiencing both summer and winter, that the road deteriorated to the point where we had to put a new surface on it. So that's the pavement that you see on there. It really is a Band-Aid, because we knew, we were anticipating that we would come here with this water and sewer project at the same time. So the $100,000 that we talked about before will be added to our existing road monies, and it will give us enough to get a very good plan on Snows Mountain Road before we bring it to the town meeting for discussion. We also, in addition to all of this engineering work, there will be some road work that we have planned for 2024. We have 3 roads and an intersection that we are currently getting a price to do work on this summer. We want to do a contract extension with Piper Construction, which is the crew that did the work last summer. They did an excellent job in our estimation in doing the road improvements. They're going to be in town in the spring, finishing up Snowsbrook Road. So we want to extend that contract and do Jennings Peak Road with a complete rebuild, doing base work, putting in new drainage, Osceola Road and Golden Heights Road will be reclaimed, which means they'll be chopped up and it'll be regraded. A very minor drainage work is necessary on those two roads, and then repaving. And then the intersection of Jasinski Road and Snows Mountain Road up at the top of Snows Mountain, the actual corner and the intersection is very bad, and we need to do some immediate work there because we're having trouble maintaining it in the winter. So those are the 4 things that we will do during 2024. Utilize that $1 million that I mentioned, do the design work, and then come back to you in 2025 with additional road projects. So that's the update on the roads. And not seeing any questions, I'm gonna move. Oh, got a question.
Right. Why is Golden Heights Road being redone? I know there's a culvert at the bottom that needs some attention, but that road of all roads is in pretty good shape. I think.
There are patches already that are starting to deteriorate, and areas with the in the area of the new development that we want to address, and drainage that we want to address as well.
Is there no recourse with the developer to fix what they screwed up?
No, the developer will help pay. We've already talked to the developer, so they will be paying for any of the repairs that are directly a result of their work. But there's also an approach in road maintenance is that, so Golden Heights has been cut a couple of times and has patches in it. One of the reasons why we want to do it relatively quickly is we will spend less money doing the repairs now than we would if we left it and let it deteriorate. That's why we're spending so much on Snows Mountain Road, because we have to just do a complete rebuild. So we're trying to be a little proactive, especially with Golden Heights. And quite frankly, we don't have anything else really designed right now. So we tried to pick roads that we could do, with very little engineering effort while we get the major roads repaired.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
With the large rainstorm we had in December, at the end of December, there was a couple of washouts in different places throughout the valley.
Yeah.
And they're like cold patch now.
Correct.
Are you planning on doing anything to fix that?
Yes. So great question. Thank you. So the FEMA we have gone through the entire town with the damages done on December 18th. Our director of public works has been working, getting estimates, paving estimates together, Triple I Road, areas of Snows Mountain Road, and now they're Boulder Path and Newton Peak. The roads that were impacted, we have put cost estimates together, and we're waiting for an emergency declaration. And once that comes forward, we should receive some money back from FEMA, and it will be put towards those projects. But again, we can't tell you at town meeting or use it as a funding source right now because we don't know how much we'll get back. Yeah.
So if you don't get the money, the work doesn't get done? Or?
No, if we don't get the money, then we will utilize, again, we have $1 million right now. We're going to try to minimize using that money because we want to put that towards these major road projects. Okay, so the wastewater treatment facility, yay, and thank you everyone who was here last year for the authorization for $37 million. We're not going to spend that for several years, but we had to part ways with our engineering firm about April or May of last year, and we took from May till approximately August to identify a new engineering firm, actually till September, to identify a new engineering firm. Since September, when we selected a new firm, we have been in contract negotiations with them. They have prepared a scope of work, a list of tasks to do between now and April of next year, which at the end of that time period, we will be at 30% of our final design of the new plan. So 2024 will be spent going back through the design process, making sure that everything is taken care of, and that we have the correct plant that we need, that it's in the correct location. And we're going to keep moving the project forward. I believe that when we have the 30% final design done, April of next year, we will know the type of plant that we're going to have and the location of it. Then they will spend the balance of 2025 doing all of the final design, the rest of the final design, getting all of the permits that are required from the state. And then we should be able to put it out to bid towards the end of the year in 2025, and then move on with construction in 26 and 27, probably finishing up early in the construction season in 2028. So still a long time away, but we are moving forward again. We have selected Black and Beach Engineers. They're a very large firm. They have international experience in wastewater, and they have designed many plants, hundreds probably. And they also, the other advantage to Black and Beach is they have experience in North America and in ski areas, in mountainous regions, and in Europe as well. So they know cold weather, they know ski resorts, and we're very confident that they can give us the right design. Yes.
Quick question, can you give us a synopsis of why we parted ways with previous engineering firm and the costs associated with that contracting with the new one?
The decision came about when they did not deliver per the schedule for the design work that they were doing. And we realized that they were not keeping up with the timeframes that we're working within. And we decided that we needed a firm with more in-house capability and quite frankly, a larger firm. This is not an easy project to deal with. We have probably, for those of you who were not here last year, we have the most stringent effluent permit in the United States. We have to treat our water more than any other plant in the country. So, and that's a function of a lot of things, but it does put a lot of constraints on us in the design, and the firm that we had could not deal with this.
Were monies recouped or were they paid in advance?
No, they were paid for work done, and we ended the contract.
So no impact on your graded and the total project cost.
The total project costs, maybe a little more engineering work, but I think, Dylan, tell me if I get this wrong, but I believe that this new firm will give us a better design, and we'll probably end up with maybe not less costs, but not more costs in the end. We will spend more on engineering. It's, the current contract through April of 2025 for all of the work is 1.3 million for that design. And then there'll be subsequent engineering contracts after that.
So when you talk about the project probably coming to realization, the new one in 2028.
Yeah.
That seems to be about 2 years later than
Yeah.
we envisioned in earlier discussions.
Yeah.
First off, was the Fed's happy with that?
We have not gone to the feds yet, and we will not go to the feds until we have more design work complete. We have talked to Department of Environmental Services about that, and they're in agreement with that, and they have said that they will go with us to the EPA. We do not foresee any enforcement action at this point in time. Believe it or not, it does take longer to do these projects in most cases.
We don't want to go twice.
And we don't want to go twice, and that's right, Mark.
We want to make sure when we go, we got the right.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Now, so now the impact is we're gonna operate in our current couple of years.
Yeah,
Well,
we are having a facilities assessment as part of the scope of work from Black and Beach. But in their initial look at the plan, they feel that we can make it with some small upgrades and repairs. We will-
you guys envisioned that in 40 million.
Yes, we did. We had an allowance for the continued, or the maintenance of continued operation of the plant, which was about 1.7 million in the overall budget.
All right, so 40 million still looking good.
Yeah.
2 years later,
Mhm.
we're gonna have good clean water. We'll keep this thing going for those couple of years.
Yeah,
Hang on, there's gotta be something else there we can get caught. Okay.
come on. We're trying to think of everything.
Here's where I think that. The, okay, funding here now.
Yeah, funding. So let me,
Wait, let me question.
Go ahead. all right.
Last year, you guys did a hell of a job, and I mean it. You know, we had the issue of that mountain up there, the sewer connections or whatever. But in terms of the vision for financing, you guys are gonna go line up about 30% of the project cost in terms of grants and other things around available to help us. You know,
Between 20 and 30%.
20 and 30, okay. Still good?
Yes,
Still
so,
good thinking?
yeah, so let me just talk about that.
Yeah.
We have already closed an agreement with Department of Environmental Services. They have a clean water state revolving fund that is available to communities to fund these projects. They have already given us 4 million. We have closed that agreement. That's for a 20-year note at 2.563%. Okay, 20-year. Last week, we were identified for an additional 6 million under the same terms. So we now have $10 million. We have not closed on the 6 yet, but we will. But we have term for 10 million of the money at 2.563. And the way that that works is it's a reimbursement program. And as we expend money, we submit and they pay us. And any money that they pay us between now and the plant going online is a 1% construction loan. Okay, so we will pay that 1% each year. You're going to see that probably starting in 2025 in the budget. But we'll have that small amount of construction loan.
You have to spend all that, the 10 million, between the two by a certain time, or is that?
No, it's open until the project's done. It's open till 28. And so we'll only take, and so they will keep, they've already committed to us to do the entire 42 million if we need to. But hopefully we won't need to.
The 40 million of last year become 42.
Well, it was because there was some additional money in prior years. The total project is 42.
Even what last year?
Yes,
So that's the gross amount.
that's the
before-
gross amount before. But it's actually 870,000 of it is a straight up loan from ARPA money from the feds.
Got it.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Okay, so anyway, we are moving again and we'll give you another update. Next, oh, did I have another question? Jen?
You were saying you were using the word grant, but it sounds like these are loans, not grants.
The CWSRF, sorry, the State Revolving Fund money is a loan program. We got an $890,000 grant from the feds, from ARPA
So
money.
kind of those are grant, the rest is-
Yes. And, I'm sorry, there is a minimum 20% forgiveness on that loan. Right, so far, they're continuing to allow us to enter the same terms. It's locked in for the 4 million, probably locked in for the next 6. So out of that $10 million, when we go to make a payment, they forgive 20% of it. So,
Yeah, you had a great chart last year.
yeah, and I'll renew that for town meeting. Okay, and now the other one. Oh,
Well, thank you.
it froze. Oh my gosh, I can't speak. We don't have a slide. There we go. All right, transfer station. So with the change in the treatment facility concept, we are going to need to continue to use the sludge drying bed at the top of the hill for the foreseeable future, maybe all the way to 28. I don't know exactly how long yet, but we have to keep using it. So we cannot build the transfer station that we showed you last year. We have to leave the transfer station where it is and permit it in that location by making it, putting in a permanent fence and a more permanent facility. So for the foreseeable future, the central transfer station is going to stay by the Public Works garage where it is right now. And we are going to work on that throughout this summer. We have already submitted the permit requests to keep it there. We've had meetings with Solid Waste Bureau at DES, and they've approved that location. We just have to get some engineering done to produce an actual plan for them to approve. I don't think that that's going to be anywhere near, if you remember, we were estimating $1.6 million for the new transfer station up above. Putting in the permanent fence and getting that site where we are right now permitted is probably not going to cost anywhere near that. So that was also part of the 42 million. So
the area where they clear cut trees, that's been cleaned up.
When we build the new treatment plant, we will need a contractor area. We already have that little road that was cleared to put a road access in. We may put that access road in this summer because it's already permitted and ready to go. All we have to do is build it. But that may be where the contractor area is during the treatment facility project, because we're leaving the transfer station down below. If you remember last year, we talked about having that where the contractor had their vehicles and their materials and stuff. So we may not do it down by the DPW garage. We may do it up above. Yes.
So it's been 3 months, 4 months that we've had it fenced in now. we went from 7 dumpsters in that area, not fenced, to 3. Do we know if we're having trash?
We are having trash. We do not have a number yet. I hope by town meeting, we can give you some history from September through the end of this month and show, but yes, we are seeing a drop off. And good news, we're not seeing a significant increase around town. Like people have not yet figured out where the dumpsters are. So I think our total solid waste is gonna see a small decrease.
Mark, to what do you attribute?
Our previous facility before we put the fence up was open 24 hours a day, every day of the year. Absolutely. Absolutely. We know that. There were people there at 2 a.m. dropping their trash. So yes, it was happening, and it was coming probably from a lot of neighboring communities. So, you know, I want to get a complete year under our belt to really see what the impact is, Mike, but
It's
yeah,
too bad to be
let's-
restricted.
Yeah.
Plans for the brush drop off ever to be open again?
it is going to be opened again once we get this permit settled with a lower facility. Yep. Okay, so now let's talk about this year. So the budget summary, there's a 2-page summary cover sheet for your town budget that was with the handouts. You should have a 2-pager, looks like this.
Front and back.
Front and back. And if you don't have one, there should be one up on the table up back. So this year, we are proposing an operating budget of $6,390,824 dollars. The bond projects of $1,190,000 and other warrant articles of $688,487 for a total of $8,270,811. So the total appropriation, because of that big bond issue, looks like it's going way down. So you got to go down and start subtracting out these revenues, which are those things we collect before we determine what the tax rate is. So we're proposing revenues this year of $3,903,000, giving us an estimated taxes to be raised of $4,367,724. That is a $524,000 increase over year, 2023 to 2024. 524,683. Okay, and so what is that? So first, let me talk about fund balance that we talked about when Amy was speaking. So every year, we have an amount of money that is unexpended from the budget or revenues that we did not anticipate when we set the taxes. That goes into a fund called the undesignated fund balance. And that money is available for the selectmen to use when they develop the budget to offset, and we have historically used it to offset capital purchases, one-time items like a police cruiser or whatever. So you will see wording in the articles that says to be funded through the use of the fund balance. Okay, this year we're proposing $201,500 to be used on those one-time things. We do not operate our departments based on that fund balance, just those capital items. And then you can see since 2018, we have applied those amounts each year towards these projects. over that time frame, that's $1,371,000 since 2018. That equates to about $2 and change on our tax rate at our current valuation. Okay. So you can see that even though we don't expend the entire budget, it's still, we use it eventually. Plus it is our cash flow money to pay the bills between the tax billings. So that's what the fund balance does. The impact of that proposed budget increase of $524,000 is $1.06 on the tax rate. That's about an 9% increase over last year's tax rate of $12.05. And then, yes, Stan,
Gotcha.
got it? Okay,
Your denominator is not the appropriate, the apples and oranges.
what,
You're talking about the town impact of spending the 500 grand, but the town impact of the $12 is only 60% of that.
correct.
500 grand down 60% is more like 15%.
And you see that on the second page of that budget summary,
I
right?
see that.
It is a 15% increase of the total, yes.
And am I right that that 15% of the town increase does not include all that great discussion we had under the 685?
No, that is everything.
That is.
The 15% is everything that we have talked about. Everything that, Yeah.
In the great sheet you handed out, you had a note that said, that appropriation is the appropriation recommended minus the special.
yes, so, right. I'm talking about up here.
Yes.
You're gonna, it's estimated amount of taxes to raise.
Right.
All right, is up 13.6%. The operating budget is up 13.8%. Okay, but they're two different things.
Okay, I get it.
Okay,
But the special warrants that we got.
special warrants, everything is in this estimated amount to be raised by taxes. That is the entire thing. So if you approve every warrant article on the town meeting warrant,
You're assuming.
that's what we're assuming.
Thank you.
And that includes bonds too.
Bonds don't come into play until we actually take them. Okay, so yes, there's an offsetting revenue, but it zeroes itself
Yeah.
out.
But to Mike's question.
Yeah.
It's great. There is a line item called debt service.
Yes,
Which is showing about 100 grand increase over the last year.
and that's for previous bonds that we just,
But you're not getting, now, we're not spending it on the roads, all those great projects.
yes, we are. Mhm.
But you covered the expense, the current hit in
Correct,
your debt service.
correct.
Maybe you got it covered.
Yeah, we're covered for the bonds that we've borrowed. Yes, as part of that increase. Is everybody okay? Understand that? All right. So, what is causing that increase? Oh, one more thing. When we talk about this tax rate, you guys can give me a call in October when your tax rate doesn't change by $1.06, because this year we are going to do what's called a statistical update of values. We just got a report a couple of days ago from the state of New Hampshire, the Department of Revenue Administration. They have done a study of current sale prices versus our assessments. And our ratio, right, the town is supposed to keep that ratio between 110% and 90%, with 100% being the target. Right now, our ratio is 73.5%, which means that the assessments that you have on your property record cards right now, on average, and it does vary town or property to property, on average, they are low 28 or 26.5%. Because sales are continuing to rise. And so we have put money in the budget, It's included in all of these calculations to do an update of property values. The good news is the initial statistical look at the sales, they are all very close in proportionality, so they're all going to move up approximately the same amount. So there isn't a particular type of property like undeveloped land or condos that's going up faster than everything else. They're very tightly grouped together. Okay, so, but that is going to affect that actual tax rate in October when we set it. The other thing that's going to affect it is new value. We have probably one of the biggest increases in new values that we've had since I've been here. We have all of the villas, almost all of the villa value that will be coming on the rolls. A lot of Green Peak will be coming onto the rolls. And so that amount will also be added to the tax base at the same time. So that tax rate will change. Yes.
So right now, $5,000 equals a penny, right?
Yes.
Is that gonna change in October?
Yeah, I mean, if you just take a straight percentage, it would be a penny would be 6,400 instead of 500 or 5,000. Yeah. Okay. So it is going to have a big impact. Okay. Going forward, I'll skip over. It's just showing you that we have tried to keep the town tax rate overall and the total tax rate as equal to the property valuations. So the property valuations are the blue columns, and then the tax rates are just shown how they changed over time. And this just illustrates that when we weren't really changing as a town overall, the tax rates remained relatively flat. It also shows you that the town portion of the tax rate is a majority of our tax rate here in Waterville Valley. And that's uncommon. Most of the time, it's the school that is the larger portion than the town.
Do you have a sense of the school budget in that picture?
No, that'll be tomorrow night. Mike will be up here in the hot seat tomorrow night.
Put down, I don't remember.
You said the right number, down.
Down 10 cents.
Yeah.
Whoa, Mike, I can give you a hug.
Okay. Yeah. All right, so this is a breakdown, just pie chart. I don't know if any of you are visual, but this just shows you the different departments and what share of the budget they have. That's just information for you. Okay, so the changes, the 524,683 out of that increase. These are the major areas and the amounts associated with them that are impacting the bottom line of the budget. Personnel at 490,000 of it, debt service at 90,000, and other operating costs at 105. Okay. Personnel, the 490,000 increase is coming primarily from the addition of 4 full-time positions to our staff. One of them is a promotion from part-time to full-time, but the overall effect on our total personnel count is 4 new full-time positions. There's a CDL driver. Our trash truck requires a commercial driver's license to drive it. So we need a CDL driver. That is for succession planning, and because we want to utilize the current CDL driver to be more of a supervisor. He's the most experienced person in our solid waste department. And with the new transfer station and meeting new state regulations, we need to have somebody to actually help us manage that and run the transfer station. And he's also a very senior employee. And so we're doing succession planning by getting backup capability with a commercial driver's license. I don't know if you guys are aware, but finding a CDL driver right now is very difficult. So, yeah. Are you one? You want to sign up? Come on down after the meeting. We want to talk to you. So that's one position. And then the other one is the solid waste laborer position, moving from part-time to full-time to again staff the transfer station, because every time we open those gates, there has to be at least one person standing there. Water and wastewater department, we had a personnel manning survey done by state DES on just our wastewater department, and they recommended our current operation have 4.5 operators to run our current plant. We currently have 4.5 people, including this one person here, to run both the wastewater and water departments. So we are making do, but we need additional staff time. We have a lot of requirements that are being added to both departments, not only for the operation of the plants, but also for the operation of the pipes in the ground around town. We have new requirements under our wastewater permit with the EPA that we now have to have a mandatory preventative maintenance program for every sewer line in town. We're gonna have to monitor them, camera them, and look at them every so many years. We're gonna have to have a replacement program for them, the manholes and everything else. A lot of that stuff in the past, we have just fixed when it broke. Now we're going to have to be more proactive, but that's going to take staff time. And the same thing is happening with lead and copper requirements on the water side. There are new regulations coming down, and maintenance of our water system is going to have a lot more mandatory portions to it. And then in addition to that, we have a code enforcement position for a full-time admin slot. Dave has been doing extensive inspections of our new construction, but also a lot of building permits and just occupancy permits and annual recertification of our commercial properties. And so we need some administrative help for him to do that. We had a person that was doing that a few hours a week out of the town office, but we want to have a dedicated admin person to do that. We've added short-term rental licensing. We've made a lot of changes over the past several years, and we just need the admin support to do that. And then we're going to promote a person who currently works for us into that full-time code enforcement position, and then backfill the part-time admin position at town hall, because our motor vehicle registrations, billings, everything else, as we have grown now to over 715, something like that, 715 people. When I first got here, just a little note with 221 or something like that. So much more in the day-to-day office work that we have to do at town hall. So we're going to backfill that position. And then the final piece of that $490,000 was a salary adjustment. We adjusted based on inflation, utilizing the November CPI for the Northeast region at 3.2%. And then we instituted a seniority-based tenure recognition. So before, we would just give employees a percentage increase based on inflation. Well, if you start work at $10 an hour and you stay here for 20 years and you only get inflation, you're still making the equivalent of $10 after 20 years. So we are recognizing people who have experience here in the town with a 1% per year increase for seniority. And then at 5, 10, 15, and 20 years, they receive larger increases based on that seniority level. They do not receive both 1% and the larger amount. They receive a larger amount in lieu of the 1% at those milestones. And so we are trying to recruit people, and we're trying to retain the employees that we have. We spend a lot of money licensing folks. We have a lot of jobs here in town that require state licensing to do them. We're trying to recognize that within our compensation package. When I first got here, I never thought that I would be saying that to a budget hearing because we're just a small town. We had a very good compensation package overall with retirement and health insurance and all of that, but surrounding communities are starting to catch up with us. And right now it is crazy trying to recruit and retain people here in New Hampshire. So that's why we're doing it. Yes.
Did I understand you right? Town employees, they don't get a raise every 5 years?
No, we are, what we're doing is, before we were just doing the cost of living increases. So now we're going to do the 1% per year, and then at 5 years, it's 2.5, and then at 10. That's on top of the cost of living. Yes. Yeah. Okay, so any questions on personnel? And those costs are spread out throughout that budget document that you see within each department. There's a salary and wages line item. Yes.
The second line, solid waste remote for labor from part-time to full-time. Did
Yeah.
we do that last year?
No. We
looked at a portion of the year, Mike, of doing that potentially.
I think it was like the last quarter of the year, we had,
when we put the new plant, yes, when we put the new operation in, when we went to the gates closed and everything, we did do that. But this year it's full. So there's an increase. There's a percentage increase in that because we now have committed to doing that full time as a regular position in the town. Did that answer your question? You're still looking.
No, I got it. So it was unbudgeted last year.
Correct.
Budgeted this year.
Yeah, we had an extra part-time line that we've reduced this year, but that part-time line was used in September to pay for her coming on full-time. Yeah. Any other personnel questions? Okay. Principal and interest that we talked about before, it's increased $90,000 this year, and that's due to the bonds that we took during 2023. And then the other operating costs are all throughout the budget. We have materials and supplies, outside contracts. We have reduced our contingency allowance to kind of offset the overall increase in the budget, but we do have a contingency line of $75,000 on the $6 million budget. So pray for us that we've done a good job. And then legal expenses, the assessing services that I talked about with the reval, there's an increase there of $49,000. And then solid waste disposal costs, we have tempered those increases or held them down because we do think we're gonna see less amounts of solid waste that we have to transport to Bethlehem, but we'll see. And then we reduce the part-time, it's like an emergency staffing if we have to have somebody come in to do additional work or whatever. That was 25,000 and now it's 10,000. So we reduced that. Any questions? The department heads can talk to you about materials and supplies, but the costs, chemical costs, fuel costs, everything are still continuing to climb. Yes.
Have you looked at any other ways to reduce costs? I mean, have you used for that at all?
In like what way?
Right, you know what I mean, but, I mean, just talk about that, ways to reduce costs.
Yeah, we have been trying to make like building improvements, replacing windows to help with energy costs. We have a program where we go to a third-party energy supplier to keep our actual energy costs themselves down. We are constrained a lot with being a very small town and in an isolated area. Our vehicle fuel, we don't go down to Campton to fuel up vehicles. We have our own fueling point here. And it does reduce our costs in that way.
Various memberships and I'm on weekly calls regarding potential grant opportunities all the time and getting thrown at us. So we're always researching where we can apply for and potentially take advantage of a state or federal grant.
Sure.
I would just also point out that if you look at the increase of 500, let's call it 25,000, 490,000 of that is interest. 90,000 is in debt service. That leaves 105,000 for all the increased costs we're talking about. So if you look at it in terms of an operating budget and set aside personnel costs, you can see that the town staff work very, very hard to keep operating costs down year over year, with the obvious exception, the difficult issue of retention and employees, recruiting and retention.
Just go buy some robots.
Yes.
So make
if
robots,
only it was
right?
that easy.
Little chip in
Yep.
them.
People are great.
No,
I got an anomaly here on
Yeah.
your second page.
Yeah.
I showed you. And this is where you have special warrant articles from last year, 2023.
Mhm.
You look at marina maintenance all the way down.
Yeah.
And they're all there and there's nothing, so 24 proposals on those, except for one line.
Yeah.
The Array Center preschool, if I read this right, we authorized last year 35 of them.
Yeah.
And your proposal this year to add 90 grand to that?
We haven't got.
So here we go. Stan is not working for me tonight, but Stan, here's the slide about that exact thing. And Steve Larkin from the Ray Center board was here. He's still here, toughing it out. I told you it'd be a long time, Steve. So yes, so the Ray Center board came to the select board and said, we keep having the same conversation over and over regarding the preschool. Okay, and so the proposal this year is to do what's called a non-lapsing fund. Okay, so it will be for $90,000 with the intention of having that broken down into $30,000 each year for 3 years. So we will only ask for this one appropriation for the next 3 years towards the operation.
Still the same, just questioning, the authorize it each year.
That's right. Instead of coming back the 2 subsequent years, this would run through the end of the school year in 2027. And it would it would give the rate board a little bit more consistency, right? In not knowing year to year, because the school year runs through May. Right, and so they don't know year to year if they're going to be funded by the town. There is a budget breakdown that shows the operating account and the preschool accounts as separate. And I don't know how much people want to get into it tonight, but we can
don't
talk.
talk till we spend it in each of the 3 years.
Correct, and the other thing is that we plan to have a written agreement between the Ray Board and the Select Board for how that money gets spent. So 30,000 a year on this payment schedule, whatever. Yeah,
Yeah, last year there was a big discussion about this, and it was a 1 year,
Yep.
let's see what is necessary. Now you're telling us we that you're going out for 2 years. This seems to be becoming a continuous basis.
For the town to decide.
And they were there to prove themselves,
yep,
because the Tom Rose doesn't get money to the town, and he doesn't have a profit for the year.
Mhm.
Frank doesn't. I'm sure the Johnstown boss
Yep.
doesn't. I've been in business for 20+ years. Nobody, I don't go to the town when I didn't have a profitable year.
Mhm.
We need to hear from this individual and find out, but I'm not willing to commit 3 years of our taxpayer funding system.
okay, and that's why it's a special warrant article, it's not in the overall budget. It's being called out so we can have that conversation. And I don't know if people want to have it right now, we can hand out the budget and Steve can fill you in on what has happened over the past year if you would like.
He's gonna have to do it again at town meeting anyway.
Yes.
Yes, Mike.
So clearly there's some confusion around this. $90,000 seems like it's a huge increase from the $35,000. I'm gonna suggest that the warrant article is written very clear so that it's not $90,000 for this year, because that's gonna be the assumption that everybody makes.
Right. Okay, and we do have that wording. Steve, do you want to talk?
I think it's important to point out that last year we did vote on 35,000, and in last year's budget, we did only take 15. So to your point of proving ourselves, we added an additional student. We were approved at 35, we only used the 13 that was available. So when you want to talk about business, I think, you have to kind of separate business and education a little bit. Because on a greater scale, we have 2 families that moved into this valley that are now full-time residents that support Jugtown Sports Center, Coyote, all the other businesses, golf course. And so, we're trying to find a way to get more families into this valley instead of pushing families away from the valley.
Understood.
Yeah.
But quite honestly, when my kids went to school, we had them up and then paid for it. So
Yeah.
business is a business. It's not a business. It's not a profit.
Wait a minute, Patty. Yep.
Yeah, so
Serves the community.
I am in support of the preschool. But I'd like to see that breakdown that you said, you only use part of what we were without the. I think that's going to be very helpful for people to find vote on this. Or we can decide when for the preschool, but you may not use it. Then I might be more inclined to actually look up and see, maybe a little more of a plan, like how are you trying to get it to be self-sustaining?
Yeah.
So that once we go through this year, you have not just a plan, you have to act on the plan how to get it.
Right.
You're not meaning that.
Yeah, we just picked up a new student, right? So we went from 5 to 6. We're drawing from outside the community, which has been helpful. The events that we've just been in and around the valley have been a contributor to why we didn't need to take that initiative.
And that's important to share with us.
Right, right.
Yeah, hold on, Patty was next, sorry.
My only point is I've heard from business owners in town that they're having trouble recruiting employees to come and work here, and they support the preschool for that reason, to show these potential employees that we have a preschool, it makes
Right.
it easier for them to come work here. So that's, for me, one of the prime reasons that
Yeah.
it can be paid for by the town.
Okay.
Because of that.
Hold on. Yeah.
Why is the preschool rolled up to the school?
We tried to do that, but Mike, do you
We
want to?
tried and failed. The regulations for it being under the school are way higher than they are being independent. schools. So it costs a lot more for it to be in the school.
Yeah, that was the point that I was gonna make is if you think a preschool is a good thing for this town to have, the least expensive way to support it is to have a private organization run it. Not have the town run it, not have the school run it. The private organization can do it for less money than you would spend in either of those organizations.
Yeah. And just so everybody on your way out, there is a page on the table by the door. That is the breakdown of the budget. There's two pieces to it. There's the operating budget for their other programming that they do at the Ray Center, and then a preschool breakdown. And you'll see where the 30,000, the intent is to use that 90,000, 30,000 a year over 3 years. Yes.
So the $15,000 that we've left over in any central leftover money for the next 3 years, what happens to that money?
For this year, it went to fund balance.
So it goes back to the town.
I'm sorry.
That goes back to the town.
Yes, goes back to the town, and then when a special, or when a non-lapsing fund ends, the next town meeting, or the town meeting that year can appropriate it forward again, or it can go back to the fund balance, go back to the town. If there's a balance. Yes, right.
Move on to the special warrant articles that were approved in 2023. You have them listed on this on the handout that we had. Post office, like 50,000 for the marina, all these items. Now, they weren't 100% spent to that number, so do we have numbers for what less than?
Yes, we don't. I don't have it tonight, but I'll have it at town meeting, and you can come and get it at town hall.
Just to go in general, the budget is obviously very cool, very nice, and everything, but there's some reoccurring things that you have floated in here. I mean, you're not zero budgeting in this budget, so. Street lights, 10,000, 15,000, whatever. You're not spending 10,000. So why keep going at 10,000?
Because it is the only way that we have flexibility. If someone says we want another street light, it's our only way of funding that. We can't make that decision unless we have an amount of money available.
Yeah, that's
When there was.
the logic work, I get that, but it just appears to me that it is, you're plugging the budget here with basically the money that you'll never, you're gonna lose. You got the 10,000 here, 10,000 there, 2,000 here, 2,000, they're all round numbers.
Well, at the end of 2023, we had $175,000 returned to fund balance from the unspent portion of the budget. It was between 100 and the numbers haven't been
How
audited
much
yet.
under the special warrants, which they have to have that too, right?
The special warrants are handled by the selectmen as non-lapsing.
Right.
They encumber them. If there is a project,
And that's what the majority of the money is, 170.
no, the 175 is probably the majority of the money. Like I said, if you want to come on in and I'll show you.
I mean,
Where it is.
Obviously, preschool, these are all round numbers, and we didn't put in what it actually cost.
And I'll show you, I have that number available, I just don't have it here right now.
But I'm just saying that would be helpful.
Sure.
And I understand you need a little, it's less, be nice to know what it is.
Okay, sure. Any other questions? Okay, that is it
Not yet. We're gonna have on our.
Yes.